listening to the 23 Personnel Podcast, a Texas Tech athletics podcast where food and sports clash at the goal line. Here are your hosts, Spencer and Michael.
All right, what is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the 23 Personnel Podcast. I am your host, Spencer, flying solo tonight. This is your instant reaction to Texas Tech taking down Cincinnati 44-41. And, man, sometimes it is better to be lucky than good. We will never complain about a win. Texas Tech moves to 2-0 in Big 12 play. First time in more than a decade. First blackout win in what feels like that same stretch. You are 14-3 now at home under Joey McGuire. Two of those losses were previous blackout games, and then the Oregon game. So good to get that monkey off your back. I don't even know where I want to start besides pointing out. I don't know fans that were leaving after the pick six, or when you had the that last score before giving the ball back. My thoughts are y'all must be new here because no lead is ever safe. As we saw, Texas Tech defensively continued to be shredded, even without that much of a threat from their skill position, or excuse me, from their running back position. Although I don't want to short the guy. Third string running back Manny Covey for them finished with 8 carries for 15 yards, but 6 receptions for 100. 115 total yards for him on the night when he got pressed into service after Kiner went down on the first possession, and then Pryor ended up going out a little bit later. But let's start offensively. Texas Tech, through the air, Morton puts up 251 passing yards on 19 of 29 through the air. Completion percentage was much better through the first half. I believe he was 13 of 16. So he finishes the second half 6 of 13. Let me look at that up real quick. Second half, 6 of 13 for 64 yards. You did get that early turnover in the second half. Cincinnati misses their field goal going into halftime. On their first drive, you force a fumble, recover it, and then a few plays later punch it in to the end zone to get your lead back. And from there, it kind of felt like you leaned on Brooks. Again, is one of those things where it felt like we were forcing it to Brooks far too much. Cameron Dickey, I think, had one snap and it was a pass and he dropped it and never saw from him again. You didn't see Jacoby Williams. I don't know if those guys' availabilities were or such that you weren't going to see them, or more than what you did see, at least from Dickey. You had 3 guys run the ball tonight: Taj Brooks, Baron Morton, and Jalen Conyers. Brooks had 32 carries for 172 yards. For a stretch there, it felt like most of his yards were on a couple of big plays. But it felt like, again, going back to the body blows, you were able to wear him down defensively. You made them, you just gassed him a little bit and could not keep up with Brooks continuing to go back to that well. Finishes 5.5 yards per carry, 2 touchdowns, long of 35. Through the air, it felt like you had opportunities to put this game away earlier. You had opportunities to stretch it out, but you just kept getting killed so many different drives by drops. Um, Kelly had 2, Aiken had 5, Douglas had 1. Um, excuse me, those aren't drops specifically; those are targets versus catches. So Kelly had 8 receptions for 111 yards on 10 targets. McCray was 5 of 5. Aiken was 3 catches on 8 targets. One of those is going to be the what could have been targeting on the sideline. Maybe should have been. Had that targeting call been upheld against Baskerville on that hit on Sorsby as he was sliding, I think there would have been a huge uproar about how those two things were very similar in that there was a more or less a defenseless player that was hit high um, by the letter of the law. Like I could have been okay with either one of those or both of those, um, but you couldn't have one or the other be enforced. So for Texas Tech's sake, awesome that you don't have that one against Sorsby and Baskerville called against you. Um, I guess I'm confused why there was a 10-second runoff right there, but love that. Um, I guess I want to talk about that last drive defensively for a second. You had a 10-second runoff after their first play with an injury, and then you had a 10-second runoff there. Um, and then on one of their last plays, they threw the ball out to the flat to the running back. Caught it, was tackled in bounds. Ended up coming up hurt and subbed himself off, which allowed Texas Tech to match. Um, so they ran out a sub package, and it felt like you could have just run the rest of the clock out on your sub there. You did see I think it was Bookbinder on the sideline with his hands up, telling the guys that were coming off the field to slow down. Um, because you did run guys off fast enough that they were able to take another couple of shots down the field, move closer into field goal range, where ultimate didn't end up hurting you because Cincinnati misses their last field goal attempt. Um, so offensively, you had some pretty devastating, maybe too strong. You had some pretty significant drops. Um, and then your play calling, it to open the game, it felt like it was the script is always so well done. And then it felt like you either got out of the script because of the down and distance there towards the end of the drive, or whatever it was. And then you end up going with a field goal on a fourth and short-ish that maybe had you not had such negative fourth down attempts in Pullman, you would have gone for. But the conversation after that game was that the coaching staff was going to reevaluate the fourth down strategy, and it very much felt like that was the kick there was a result of that. I think we probably would have seen a fourth down conversion attempt previous to that game. Those 3 points though ended up being what Cincinnati was chasing all night when they got the missed field goal there to end both halves. I mean, getting that field goal to start the scoring ends up ultimately being the difference. You had plenty of opportunity to give up the game. It felt defensively, man, you had no answer. Um, Thankfully, you didn't have to face um, Kiner for very long. He had 3 carries for 9 yards. Um, and then even Pryor was heating up. I mean, he had 8 carries for 46 from 5.8 yards. Sorsby ends up being their leading rusher on the night, 12 carries, 52 yards, an average of 4.3. Pryor was a 5.8. Um, I would say you made them one dimensional, but their health and availability, I think, was more what made them one dimensional. Um, Sorsby was still able to get yards on the ground, but I mean, he carved you. He carved you up. 31 of 45 for 426 yards, 4 touchdowns, an interception. Probably could have had a second one there that would have really iced the game and sealed it for you. I was making a joke. I was going to make a joke in the Discord when Sanford dropped it. Like, oh, we should cut him. But then like he was looking down and he actually pointed to it. He was wearing a cast on one of his hands. Like, all right, let's take it easy. I think it's okay. Ultimately, you would love that turnover there. I was calling for it. I was, my wife could be my witness here. As much as Gilmore on the broadcast crew kept talking about how Sorsby had not thrown an interception, um, I was telling her not only is he due, is like I'm putting the call for the announcer's jinx, and then you get the first interception for him was a pick six. And of course, it was McCarty in a blackout game, which the last time he had a pick six was, or he had a pick six in the blackout game when Texas Tech played Baylor, just went against you when you were down big and you were going through playing all 3 of your available quarterbacks at the end of that game. I believe it was Shuck that threw it, but McCarty comes through tonight with that pick six. Sanford could have had another one. You had the fumble recovery on their opening drive of the second half. That would have been your 3 traditional takeaways. You got the 2 missed field goals. My goodness, I was blanking on it. Cincinnati was and still is perfect on the year on 4th downs. It went 2 for 2, so you didn't get any extra there. They were 7 of 12 on 3rd down. But I think they went like 5 or 6 straight where they converted on 3rd down. There in the second half, I was backbreaking almost. You finished the game with 5 penalties for 37 yards, but it was definitely front loaded. It felt like it was 4 for 37, I think, in the second quarter. Had that trend or that pace kept up, you would have been underwater terribly. Cincinnati only gets called for 2 for 10 yards. So ultimately, they're going to win that one there. Yards per play between the 2 teams are about even. 7.1 for Cincinnati, 7.4 for Texas Tech. Yards per completion, 13.7 for Cincinnati, 13.2 for Tech. Yards per rush, you had a big advantage here. You had 6.5 yards per carry. Cincinnati had just under 4, 3.9. Sack adjusted yards, you out gained them on the ground by 100 yards, 231 to 131. Both teams were perfect in the red zone. Again, your defense, you'd hope that would kind of tighten down a little bit, but not so much. They held the ball for 4 more minutes than you did. There was an opportunity there when you took the ball over just under 10 minutes to go. This is one of those things that I think I would love to have Lubbock Media ask Zach Gilly about this, but I'm not going to hold my breath. And even if they did ask him about this specific sequence, my expectation is it would be some kind of smarmy and sarcastic. I know what you're saying about me, but I'm gonna jack with you anyways. I'm gonna troll you from Kitley on Monday. But with 10 minutes to go or 12 minutes to go, or whatever it is, you take over. You're driving. You're picking up a bunch of yards and big chunks by Brooks there. Let me go and look at it real quick. So you took over 12:05. Brooks rushed for 6 yards. Brooks rushed for 5. Deep pass to Kelly for 28. Brooks rushed for 15. Brooks rushed for 16. And at that point, you get it down to the 5 yard line. It was reviewed. He stepped out at the 5. It was initially marked out at the 2, and then Brooks doesn't touch the ball again the rest of that drive. You run a quarterback keeper. Morton loses a yard. We have an incomplete pass. The throw was out to Aiken. It wasn't even really close. And then you had an incomplete. No, you had a completed pass to McCray going left that ended up losing yards. So you ride Brooks almost all the way down the field, except for that one, Kelly reception for 28 yards. I mean, he had 6, 11, 26, 42 rushing yards on that drive to get you to the 5, and you don't go back to him. You don't give him the ball. You don't give him another chance. You didn't see that diamond formation this week. You saw it 3 times 2 weeks ago against North Texas. You saw it 1 time last week against Arizona State. You ran it 3 times against North Texas. And the 1 time you ran it, you threw it. I mean, my goodness, like you couldn't figure it out how to put that in there. You did run some 3 tight end, 13 personnel packages, but it was more of a traditional look where you had Conyers in the backfield and Tharp and Miller on the line. And I'm not talking about like Conyers as like the wildcat back. You ran that a few times too, but it felt like we got close to the end zone, and then we saw Kitley try to be cute, try to be, trotting out his 2-point conversion plays, and it wasn't cute. It wasn't successful. It wasn't didn't get you where you needed to go. You ended that drive with a field goal there, a 27-yard field goal from Garcia with 7:50 left on the clock. Had you continued to run with Taj, even if you threw it, I mean, you would have run that clock a little bit more. You would have given them less time, but at that point, 7:50 left in the game, you're up by 10. Cincinnati goes on rather long scoring drive. I mean, give the defense credit, like they made Cincinnati drive the length of the field and do it slowly. They ended up going 5, 8. I wish they would just give me the total here, but whatever it was, took 4 minutes, 4.5 minutes off the clock to do it. To go from, to score the touchdown there to put them within a field goal. That ended up being the last of the scoring. Texas Tech gets the ball back, runs. Taj Brook up the middle for 25 yards. Taj Brook up the middle for 3. Cincinnati calls a timeout. Taj Brooks run a loss of 5 yards. Timeout. Morton incomplete pass. That's your 2-minute timeout. And then Jack Burgess punt down at the 10. And that last drive, man, it was Swiss cheese on defense. It was terrible. You did start the drive off with you blew up a screen pass. They lost yards there. But next play hits tight end Royer over the middle for 28 yards. Sorsby has a keeper for 1. Sorsby passed down the right side to Mays for 19 yards. Covey rush for 5 yards. Timeout. At this point, you're on the 38, going in towards the end zone with 36 seconds left. Sorsby's got the pass out there to the right, which is where Covey is tackled inbounds and he subs out. but then from there, they snapped the ball at 13 seconds. I think you could have slowed down so much so that like maybe they don't even get another snap off there. At first and 10 with 13 seconds, incomplete pass, take a timeout, and then a 51-yard field goal attempt as time expired. Defensively there, I mean, like, health for Cincinnati, I think, is ultimately what helped you win this game. Like I said, you didn't have to face Kiner. You didn't face their backup. You had to face Covey there, and then even him getting injured on that last possession kept the door open for you to win this game. So won't complain too much about a victory, a Big 12 win here, 2-0. Now you wrap up your 3-game homestand here. You're going to hit the road super late next week against Arizona, but you win tonight 44-41. Chase says an ugly 4-1, and I'll take an ugly 4-1. Yeah, I'd rather be 4-1 than 3-2 at this point, or 2-3, which you could have been had you lost last week too. Jeff says that defense will not cut it on the road next week. Arizona have a field day. Yeah, Fafita and T-Mac are going to feast next week, and this is going to be infuriating to watch. Brian BDC says, I'd say to anyone who's mad about being hard on Kitley despite how many points we scored, I'd say it's equivalent to a head coach mismanaging time when you're winning and letting the opponent back in. Yeah, I mean, you've got the Cats on your side of the ball. You've got the playbook. You've got the option to keep the clock running. This is now 2 weeks in a row where you have a lead. And you try to run clock, and then you get cutesy there at the end, and just you don't know how to finish off the drive, to take more time off the clock. You lack that killer instinct. Your defense just isn't there this year. Offense could really do your defense a little bit of favor there and run more clock off, but you got big brain Kitley over there drawing up some screen passes when you really just need to keep the clock moving. Brian also says it's not just making mistakes; it's when you make them. Yeah, so like on your penalties, you only had 5 tonight, but they felt big. I mean, you probably got lucky that one against Baskerville and Sorsby was not a targeting and upheld that way. But Austin says, we win, nothing else matters. I'll complain when we lose. Fair. I mean, like I said, we won that one. Much better to be 4-1 than 3-2 tonight. Much better to not have to go home and think about eating chili on top of spaghetti drowned in shredded cheese. Last Sunrise says, the difference in the game was I said a legit prayer before both missed field goals. We're going undefeated for the rest of the time. Yeah, Sunrise, you're going to be our team chaplain, or our fan base chaplain, if you will, to keep us focused and move in the right direction. But yeah, that'll do it for us tonight. Short and sweet without Michael. Not much else to say. As the clock expired, you win. Cincinnati misses 2 very, very pivotal field goals for them. 44-41, Texas Tech moves at 4-1 in the season, 2-0 in Big 12 play in 11 or 12 years. We'll take it. We'll be back on Tuesday. Give him Michael an off. Catch you guys next time.
Thank you for listening to the 23 Personnel Podcast. Help us out by subscribing, rating the show, and leaving a review. Follow us on Twitter at 23 Personnel, Spencer at PuntSuck, and Michael at Michael_LBK. Be sure to catch the next episode. And until then, guns up and let the tortillas fly.